Hello, this is Reverend Don. This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments onto whatever platform you're watching on, and they should show up here in my chat room, and we can talk directly. And my stated subject for today is winter thoughts. And this came to me earlier today as I was thinking about the fact that I'm living here in central Illinois, where we have a distinct winter, as opposed to Florida, where I lived for many years, where there's a much more mild winter. And what is the purpose of this? And I thought I would talk a little bit about that today. And hello to Nicholas in the chat room. It's good to see you, Nicholas. And Nicholas comes to us from Canada, where they definitely have winter. And hello to Antonio in the chat room. It's good to see you, Antonio. When I was being trained way back in the 1970s, a lot was conveyed through the idea of correspondence. If you've read my books, you should be familiar with the concept of isopsiphos, which is a kind of numerology where words which have the same numerology are considered to be a commentary on each other. Because they have the same numerology, they're thought to share characteristics. This is the same idea as correspondences, that things which have shared characteristics have shared meanings and shared qualities. This is the idea behind sympathetic magic. It's the idea behind an awful lot of metaphysics. So when we talk about the idea of winter, we're talking actually about, or I'm talking about a number of things. And hello to Reverend Ed Carr in the chat room. It's good to see you, Ed. I'm talking about winter, the season. I'm talking also, for myself, the direction of the north, the element of earth, the nighttime as opposed to the daytime, and many other correspondences. And what do these all have in common? Well, they're all basically, for most instances, a time of rest. And when I think about winter, particularly here in the north, where we have a very distinct winter, I think of it as a time of rest and a time of inward turning. And hello to Debbie Jeffries in the chat room. It's good to see you. It's a time for us to reflect, a time for us to consider our lives, our past and our future. During the summer months, we're busy doing. And of course, we're still doing in the winter. And that was always true. But we have a lot more time for reflection during these months. And the religious observances that we celebrate at this time have a lot more to do with our inner nature, a lot more to do with vision and magic and inspiration and realization and integration. And this is a very important part of life. And again, if you've read my books, you'll know that my teaching about the elements is that while we may talk about air and fire and water and earth, these are symbols for qualities that we're really talking about. And they might be described as inspiration, action, reaction, and integration, or in many other ways. But they're not as simple as physical elements. And when we come to that final one, integration, it is the end of one cycle and the beginning of another, and it's very important. Where exactly you place the end of the cycle and the beginning of the new cycle varies according to your cultural background. Some people will see the day beginning at sunset, others at sunrise. Some will see the year ending with the start of winter, others in the middle of it, some in the spring, some in the fall. Things like that are very, very variable. But the general process by which a thing begins, expounds, has its effect, and integrates, in my mind, is fairly universal. And that period of integration is necessary before new growth can occur. Now, why am I talking about this today? I mentioned, it's winter. Today, here in central Illinois, it's 55 degrees. So it's a comparative heat spell compared to what it was just a few days ago when it was like 11 or 17. So it's quite warm today, but it's still winter. But actually, I'm thinking more in terms of this year and the coming new year. And as you know, I've been talking all year long about Project 2025, about the various political um, changes which are taking place and what they mean for our pagan community. And it seems to me, and hello to Janet Gann in the chat room, it's good to see you, Janet, that we're at a time that it's very important for us to stop, rest, prepare, and consider what is the most effective way to go forward. And that's what winter is really about. In the natural world, this is the time that the seeds are in the ground. In northern climes, they're often covered by snow to keep them warm, which is what snow is really about. Um, Snow helps to insulate the earth and um, to help to preserve that life to return in the spring. And it has that effect on us as well. Introspection has that effect on us as well. And taking time to consider our actions has that effect on us as well. It preserves our future life for when it emerges into action. So, at this time, we really need to be looking at our lives, at our society, and at what we hope for the future. Um, there are all kinds of different people with all kinds of different hopes. And who are we to say that anyone's hopes are more legitimate than anyone else's? I'm not going to say that. I will say that I naturally root for my own hopes more than anyone else's. Um, but that doesn't mean theirs are illegitimate. It just means that I know what I need to thrive in the world. And I desire those things without negative feeling toward anyone else. But, I want to have the same legal and social rights as any other person. And I think that basically we all should. And I naturally focus on that primarily in the terms of our pagan community and also the LGBT community, since I belong to both of these. And in a wider sense, all marginalized communities, because um, to um, to reference Benjamin Franklin, if we don't hang together, we shall surely hang separately. Um, I think that it's very important to have a society which has equal rights for everyone. Now, not everybody agrees with this, and we can see that very strongly in recent years. And where are we going as a society? Well, I don't think we really know at this time, because there are so many different energies involved. One of the things I commented upon recently, the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, I compared it to the assassination of the Grand Duke Sergei just over 100 years ago. In that, a lot of people felt this was a terrible tragedy, that Grand Duke Sergei was a good person who had done good things, and his death and the effect on his family were very unfortunate, which certainly at one level is true. At the other level, it was a big red flag for the aristocracy of Imperial Russia that they really needed to adjust some things. and they totally ignored this. No one at that time, in my opinion, could have accurately predicted, except perhaps for certain metaphysical people, how that was ultimately going to play out. Nor do I think that, barring psychic resources, that we can predict how this is going to play out. There are many different forces competing for the future. But if we want to see the future we hope for, we need to be one of them. And how do we do that? Well, right now, in my opinion, what we need to do is to become clear in our minds and clear in our soul of what it is we want to see in the world. If we know what we want, we'll be far more effective in pursuing it. A certain essay on pathos.com by, I believe, John Beckett was brought to my attention the other day on why political magic is often ineffective. And it was a very good essay. I will say that. And one of the things it pointed out is that, one, there are many different competing forces, and it's a complex situation. But the other is that, as far as our community goes, we don't agree. We don't have, for the most part, common goals. So, except in the very loose ways, and even then, only for some. This, of course, means that, the idea of our community pursuing any one direction when we cannot agree on the direction cannot happen. And that is unchangeable. There's nothing to be done about that. But as I often say, those who can work together should. I've said in this program what my personal goals for the future are, the society that I feel we should be living in, the world I feel we should be living in, where everyone can live a peaceful life regardless of who they are. Not regardless of their actions, but of who they are. I don't think that anyone should be reduced to a second-class status because of their religion or their race or their sexual orientation, or even their cultural background. Now, there are, of course, certain actions that we cannot approve of, and violence is obviously one of them. As a society, that is a very dangerous thing to be approving of. I think we're going to see more of it before we see less of it, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying that's a good thing. I actually greatly mourn the peaceful years of the past as I look at our very, very combative present. There's never been a time in my life when, for example, people from different backgrounds, different political backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, were not, to some extent, at conflict. And certainly not the first time they've been highly polarized. But there have also been periods of time when they were not. And I believe that we can achieve equilibrium between even highly contentious groups if we focus on this, if we direct our energies to this. And I absolutely do not want to see the dominance of, Christian dominionism, Christian nationalism. I think that is a path of great violence and ultimate despair. And why do I think that? And that is, you look at every other time they've come to power, that's exactly where they've gone. You can look back to the English Civil War and see how that played out. You can look back to other times these people have taken power in this country or other countries and see the road they tend to go down. It's not a good road. And ultimately they overplay their hand and get put out of power, and things move on in a new direction. But I'm hoping that is not necessary. And hello to Jade Willow in the chat room. It's good to see you. And when we talk about things like political magic, I hope that we can use this to build a peaceful future in which we all can thrive. Um, I see no reason that this is not possible. Whether it is what we'll be able to do is another question, but I see no reason that it's not possible. Um, but what do we need to be able to do it? And Nicholas says you have to believe what you believe, but I fear violence for sure. Well, yes, you should. Um, However, we are magical people, and we don't have to just be carried along by fate. We can play an active role in where the world goes. This is why I started the Corellian Peace Campaign 9 years ago. Um, and I believe it has made a difference. Um, and hello to Frederick Lewis Awesome in the chat room. It's good to see you, Frederick. Um, Frederick says, "Hail to thee, Rev Don. Hail to you, Frederick." So I guess part of what I'm saying, a magical mermaid says it takes a lot of pressure to make diamonds, and that is true. And sometimes when we come to unpleasant places, there is a reason they must happen. One of the things that I have to say, I've seen a lot of negativity come into prominence in society that I thought society had passed beyond. I'm talking about US society, which is where I am. I certainly knew that, well, racism, for example, was still an issue, but I thought it was less an issue than it is. Various other various other social evils, I thought we'd moved farther beyond. We obviously have not. Maybe it's necessary to go back into these in order to finally move beyond. So philosophically, I certainly admit that. But for myself and my community, I'm hoping to have it be as not destructive as it could possibly be. To have as positive a future as we can possibly have. And for us to do that, I think we need to free ourselves from emotional reaction and instead focus on what it is we wish to see and work in that direction. Now, of course, it's impossible as humans to be without emotion. And going back to what Nicholas was saying about fearing violence, for sure. Well, yes, of course we do. Everyone does. But we cannot allow that to be our only consideration, particularly if we truly believe, as I do, that we are magical people. I'm not in this program going to go into great detail about what I think we need to specifically do, although I'm eventually going to go into that detail. But what I am going to say is what I would like you to do is to spend this time thinking about what you wish to see, not what you're afraid of, and not even what you'd settle for, but what you actually want to see. And focus on what you think makes a good world, what you think would be the world we would want to live in. And clarify this in your mind, because when it comes to magic, if you can't have clarity, you're not going to have success. Hello to Jade Rising in the chat room. Now, Magical Mermaid says, unfortunately, hatred lies just under many surfaces. Status quo using it for division to dominate. Well, that's certainly true. And, I'm not saying to ignore your emotions. I'm saying not to be dominated by them. Um, when I think about Christian dominionism, for example, I have many negative emotions in that direction. Um, I think back to my mother, who had a hate letter that was sent to her after my sister died, um, denouncing her as a bad person. Um, I assume because of who she was, and signed only a Christian. All my life, I have carried that memory with me. Um, and she continued to read that letter, I guess, every day for years and years. I would assume to remind herself of the negativity in the world. One of the things that we cannot escape is that there is much negativity in the world. Now, Jade Willow says, I was robbed at gunpoint, and the police are not doing anything about it. So I did a protection spell around me and in my house. And I think that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. We're magical people. We have resources at our conscious fingertips that others don't. Now, everyone is magical, but we are consciously magical. We should be using the skills we have. I'm very sorry to hear that you were robbed. That's a terrible thing. But I'm very glad to hear that you took this very practical response to it. Not simply giving in to fear, but using your magical ability to cast protection around yourself. And I think you'll find that that will be effective. I have often used magic for purposes of protection. Um, even for example, in I think I spoke the other day about a car accident I was in some years ago where I was T-boned in the side of my car. And in that moment, I was able to use magic for a good result that I don't think would have happened without it. Um, as it was, I had no physical um, bad effect from that accident, but where they originally were hitting, I don't know that that was going to be the case. Magic is a real thing. It makes a real difference. And I would say that, and Nicholas says you can manifest that the robber gets caught. And yes, you can. Um, Magic, if you're truly studying magic, it needs to be more than just something you read about. It needs to be something that you do. That's the point of studying magic. And I've often said that if magic can't help you when your car is skidding off the road, there's no point to it. But I know from experience that it can. And whatever situation you find yourself in, using these skills is beneficial. So as we go into winter, and we're into winter, but as we go through winter, if we stop and think about what it is that we wish to leave behind with the old year, wish to bring in with the new year, what we wish to manifest in the world, and then we put our manifestational ability behind it, we will be in a better place. Now, um, Ed the Pagan is planning a major Black Moon ritual at the end of this month, and I hope that you will join us for that. I will be part of it, and it is part of this same idea. Um, and as we go into the new year, the new calendrical year, as we go into a politically changing world, we need not to go simply as passive spectators, but as what we claim that we are, magical people. Hello to Steve Taylor in the chat room. And Steve Taylor says, hello and happy Monday. And happy Monday to you. Happy Monday to everyone. We are magical people, and this gives us abilities that we should be using. And so often in my life, I've seen people who study and practice magic, when they come to an actual problem, simply become a passive reactor to that problem. That is not what we should be doing. We should be taking a positive and active role in the future that is coming to us. We have the abilities, we have the techniques. We need to make sure we also have the knowledge of what it is we want to see. So again, my request to you is think about what you want to see in the world. Think about the world you want to create so that you can better do so. With that, it's time for us to have a word from our sponsors. Why? Because we love our sponsors. And here we go.
Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours.
And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub and Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. And thank you for joining us today. And Jade Willow says, magic runs in my family. Well, magic runs in my family too. And, I was talking the other day about my great uncle George, which is not a magical story, but it's an interesting story. He was one of Abraham Lincoln's most famous clients, George High. But he reminds me that one of the things my family stressed very, very highly as I was being raised was to live a remarkable life. And, I think I'd have to say that I've done that. I have had wonderful adventures. I've known wonderful people. Some roads have gone in directions I didn't entirely anticipate. But, I can't really say that I regret anything. I have had a remarkable life. And it's not done yet. Because one of the things that I find myself thinking about as we go into this winter is I'm still here. And as long as you're here, there's obviously more to do, at least as long as you're willing to do it. And I know that I have many things ahead of myself. Not quite the same energy I had when I was 20 or 30 or 40, but on the other hand, the energies I have are a little more mature, and there's something to be said for that. And I find now, in my 60s, that the political battle that I've always felt was coming, is on our doorstep. The battle with Christian dominionism, which, of course, they've been fighting the whole time. And, are we going to be able to hold our own? Well, only if we try. And now Nicholas says, have you ever written a book about your travels? I have not, but it's on the list. And I am thinking that would be a good book here in the future. It is very interesting to consider an autobiography. Because, for one thing, you have to step back from your life to be able to write. Um, and I guess in my mind, one of the things that's caused me to not write that much about myself is I've always thought of an autobiography as being like the last statement on your life. But I realize many people have written several at different points in their life. I think Betty Davis had 4 or 5 of them during her lifetime. So there are different ways to go about that. So somewhere along the line, that autobiography is coming, um, which will talk about famous people I have known, not famous people I have known, travels and adventures and magic and all of those good things. Um, Hopefully in a way that is beneficial to everyone. With that, we've come to the end of our half hour, and I hope that you've found these thoughts on winter to be helpful. And again, this is the time for us to look within ourselves, to look at where we're going and make sure that we're going where we want to go, not just to passively go down the road. Um, so, with that, I thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow, and let us close with our prayer as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to continue to be with us and guide us as we go forward and help us to see what it is we wish to manifest in the world, and then help us to manifest it. Help us to be the change we wish to see, and help us to make the future we wish to have. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, knowing you're always with us. We thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always, and I'll see you again tomorrow.